Our family never really celebrated Christmas. Me and my sister received no gifts, and our mother never decorated the house. Mother didn't allow Christmas music or movies to be played. It felt like she hated the holiday. We never understood why Mother punished us like this when Christmas was the best day of the year for other kids. When I turned 6 and my sister was 4, she told us this: "I'm really sorry we can't celebrate. I'm worried you haven't been nice enough and Santa will punish naughty kids." Of course, we debated and insisted that we behaved well enough. "It is not nice enough, John. You broke our backyard fence last summer by hanging on it, and Kate broke the TV while running around the house. I'm sorry, children, not this year." We cried and pleaded for Mother to forgive us and let us have a real Christmas, but she refused. Kate blamed me and I blamed her. We hated each other for ruining the holiday by not being nice enough. We later made peace and decided to be the nicest kids on the planet next year. Next November, we were ecstatic. Mother had just told us that we had behaved really well and it was possible to have a Christmas this year. We jumped in the air together and Kate and I hugged Mother. All of us were crying. In December, Mother started decorating the house. We insisted on helping her and started placing ornaments on the tree. Mother went outside to hang lights on the house and we continued indoors. We were having so much fun. This was all new to us and exciting. While hanging the ornaments, Kate dropped a glass ball on the floor and it shattered. We both gasped. Kate was beginning to cry. I told her to be silent and started cleaning up. "Kate, we can't tell Mother." She nodded and wiped her eyes. I picked the glass pieces and hid them on the bottom of the trash bin. Just then our door opened and Mother came in. She looked at us and asked, "John, what's going on?" "Nothing, Mother. I was just going to take out the trash." "Oh, thank you, son." I looked at Kate and we looked at each other. At Christmas Eve morning, we were thrilled. There were presents under the tree, Christmas music on the radio, and Mother was cooking in the kitchen. We had never been happier. We insisted on opening our presents, but Mother refused. "We opened the presents in the evening after dinner. Be patient. You have behaved so well." Kate and I hesitantly agreed. We had just had dinner and we were sitting in front of the tree with Kate. "Wait, children. I'm going to the store to get us milk with the cookies. I'll be back in 15 minutes and then we open our presents." Mother went out and her car started. When she drove out, Kate whispered, "John, I was naughty." "It's okay, Kate. Mother didn't see us." She looked at me and then the floor. "We behaved really well, Kate. We deserve this." She didn't react. Rubble came down our chimney. Rubble came down our chimney. We looked at each other and then at the fireplace. "Santa!" Kate shouted, excited. "But we already got presents," I thought out loud. The fireplace thudded and ash dust filled the room. We coughed. Something big was crawling out. I saw the outfit of Santa, but something was not right. He breathed really heavily. I couldn't see well, but his face looked crooked. The eyes were dark and his mouth was too big for a human. It walked slowly towards us. "Naughty," it growled. We screamed and tried to get up, but we couldn't move. The thing opened his bag and picked Kate up with one hand. I saw she tried to scream, but we couldn't move a muscle. The thing climbed up the chimney with Kate in its bag. I never saw her again. I cried and shouted, told Mother everything when she came back. She didn't respond to me, just cried and wailed, "Not again, not again." 12 seems to be the age when kids start putting the heat on their parents about the truth behind Santa. I was certainly no exception to that rule. How are Santa's elves able to make that video game I wanted in their workshop? I thought Nintendo owned Mario. Or how about the ever-infamous visiting every house in one night question? Did the jolly old man own some kind of time-extending device? Or maybe the most obvious question of all, how could he have lived for this long? A lot of people say he trains apprentices who take his place every few decades. Others claim he's just immortal. As for everything else, magic seemed to be the universal lie everyone had agreed on. Whatever the case, I just went with the conclusion that it was my parents' doing. Of course, they'd deny it and claim ignorance if I confronted them, but it wasn't enough to dissuade my beliefs. So, one Christmas Eve, when I couldn't sleep as these questions danced among my dreams of sugar cereals and new games, I decided to investigate the noises coming from my living room. This time, surely, I would catch my dad or mom in the act of stowing presents under the tree. At least then they'd let me in on a truth. But as I entered the living room, I saw a man before me that I did not recognize. He was dressed in red and white, with a slightly overweight body, and he wore a stingy white fake beard. His hair, or what remained of it, was graying around the edges of his classic Santa hat, and his eyes were wide with fright as he dropped a present under the tree. Being the intuitive youth that I was, I came to two conclusions. Either this was a home invader stealing my family's gifts, or this was the real Santa. I opened my mouth to scream, but the man rushed towards me and covered my mouth. "Shh, shh," he said, putting a finger to my mouth, trying a smile. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. I was petrified of this man. Then, slowly, he took back his hand and extended it towards me. "It's all right there, little one. You know who I am, right?" I nodded, not shaking his hand back. The trembling man nodded as well, then grabbed an empty sack lying on the floor and gestured to the tree. "Look, see? I bring gifts. Now, run along to bed, or I might have to put you on the naughty list." He started drifting towards the deeper, hearty voice stereotypically associated with Kris Kringle, but I wasn't fooled. Regardless, I wiped my eyes and began to step back from the living room, trying to create some distance between me and the stranger. The man simply watched, wiped his brow, and proceeded to approach the fireplace. I stopped and observed, confused as to how he was going to leave my house. But a blast of green flames erupted from the chimney, and the man fell back to the floor. I couldn't see his face, but I'm certain it was twisted in fear like my own. A massive, bony hand spawned from the fire, and the arm that followed was draped in raggedy fur. Then another arm, and then the skull of some wild creature with two large horns followed, nearly as large as the fireplace itself. The bones popped and snapped as it slammed its hands into the floor. The entire monster was engulfed in the flame, yet it did not seem to burn anything in the house. "Eddie," the monster declared, speaking to what I guessed to be the man on the floor. "No, no," Eddie shouted back. "I did my part, see? 10,000 houses, just like you said, right? 10,000. I did my part. And yet you allowed a human child to see you. You know the rules. Look, I've learned my lesson. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Just let me go, please. I delivered all the..." "Let you go? Did you let that woman go, Eddie? I don't seem to recall you letting her go. This was your second chance, and you've wasted it." "What are you going to do?" Eddie whispered. I could make out his quaking figure being overshadowed by the creature in the fireplace. The next sound to be heard was a crunch, with a soft beginning and a snapping finish. I jumped as the sound repeated a few times, finally letting out a shaky breath. I prayed in my head that it wasn't what I thought, but when the creature reared its head towards me, I saw the red and white pants hanging from its mouth, and it chewed on Eddie's corpse, then watched it slurp up his legs like strands of spaghetti. I covered my eyes and tried to tell myself it wasn't real. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. And after a quiet minute, I peeked between my fingers to see the monster staring back at me from the fireplace. The pace of my breathing grew quicker and sharper, my eyes unable to escape from the grasp of those empty eye sockets. "Now, run off back to bed, little one, or else I might put you on the naughty list." My legs finally found the strength to leave, and I sprinted from my parents' room, diving into the sheets with them. There wasn't a trace of the events the night before when my family went down to the tree the next morning. There was even a little note next to an empty glass and a half-eaten cookie on the table. "Have a Merry Christmas. S. Claus." As much as I tried to take in the warm, comforting atmosphere that came with Christmas Day, I couldn't stop watching the fireplace, terrified that the monster would return. At least, now I know the truth about Santa Claus. I could never sleep well in hotels. I guess that's somewhat of an understatement. I could never sleep well in general, but hotels were the worst. Just the thought of that previous occupant of this bed as a complete stranger was repulsive in my mind. But that's beside the point. What I'm getting at is how this lack of sleep in hotels changed my life. Christmas. We were spending Christmas in a shitty hotel and not with family. great. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I didn't enjoy the all-you-can-eat buffet of soggy hash browns and grits for Christmas Eve dinner. Of course, the first snow of the season had to cancel our flight down to Virginia. It was Christmas Eve and I was trying to sleep in this bleach-saturated room. My mind was wondering what happened in here to cause such an excessive amount of bleach needed. The room was nothing out of the ordinary. 2 beds, one for my dad and I, and another for my sister and mom. A bathroom, and a stained microwave that looked in need of a good dusting. Somehow I escaped the room and the stench of bleach into a dreamless sleep. Waking up, I could tell it was early morning. My dad was next to me snoring, and he usually wakes up before 4 a.m. That's when it hit me. It's Christmas, and I was about to let this bad fortune ruin my favorite holiday. Looking across the bed at the clock to check the time is when I noticed it. The silhouette of a man about 6'3" across the room, staring at my mom asleep. Still half asleep and caught in the moment, I couldn't help thinking of Santa Claus. I realized how stupid the thought was, and horror soon filled my head. I choked back a shriek. I knew I couldn't let him see me awake, so I quietly put my head back down, pretending to sleep. My mind was racing. Someone was in my room and I couldn't do anything. I was a scrawny 16-year-old. This man looked built like an ox. I wondered if I could wake my dad up in time, but I knew that wouldn't work. He slept like a rock. A bucket of water couldn't get him up fast enough. I was practically in tears. I'd never felt so helpless. For a second time, I choked back a scream. He was standing next to me, and I could feel and hear his repulsive breath on my face. It smelled like he'd been eating rotten meat for a week now with no thought to brush his teeth. If he didn't know I was awake, surely he did now. Seeing my face was contorted in fear. The breathing stopped, and I couldn't help the sigh of relief. I would have kicked myself, but there was no need. I heard the room door open and close. I launched out of bed. Nothing in the room was in disarray, and my family was still asleep. That couldn't have been a dream. I couldn't have imagined it. Feeling awake as ever, a horrible idea popped into my head, and before I could push it away, I was pulling the door open. Glancing back to the door in order to memorize the room number, I saw the giant spray-painted black X on the door. Had I seen this without the prior experience, I probably would have thought it was just some stupid kids. I knew better, but not enough to know what it was for. My heart skipped a beat. There he was, turning the corner at the end of the hall. Why am I doing this? I tailed him down to the parking lot. He was nowhere in sight. One moment, he's walking out the lobby. The next, he's gone. Realizing how cold it is outside in paper-thin pajamas, I returned to the lobby. No one was around. Strange. I could swear there's usually a night concierge. Adrenaline wearing off, I realized how stupid and rash my actions had been. He could have killed me. I cursed myself back up the stairs. I knew something was wrong when I got to my floor. The door to my room was wide open. I hadn't left it that way, right? I walked inside, and after a quick search of the room, I determined it safe and my family was still asleep. I locked the door and got back into bed, though I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I listened to my dad get up, and eventually my mom followed, but I still pretended to sleep. A few hours passed, and my parents got my sister and I up. We got into the car and made our way back to the airport. Digging through my bag to grab my iPod led to the finding of something that hadn't been in there the previous day. A note simply held 5 words that I still think about to this day. I knew you were awake. It's now been 2 months since the hotel experience, and I'm still scared for my life, and it gets worse every day. That note I found wasn't the only one. I still receive them.